Just before you start, a quick introduction. Anamarija Batista, who just took the chair in the middle, is a researcher, lecturer, and curator. She studied economics and art history in Vienna. She curated a number of exhibitions, amongst them Productive Work, What It Is Supposed to Mean at Museumsquartier in 2018, Bosch und Hofbauer at the Academy of Fine Arts in 2018, and Crisis as an Ideology at Kunstraum Niederösterreich in 2016. And your present research project, basically, that you started in 2018 is about modernism and modernist architecture at the Croatian coastline. Is that true? And there's also a book coming out in 2022 at Sternberg Press about artistic practices, temporality as an artistic practice. Okay. Thank you for coming, the three of you, and please start the conversation. And we want to open it up pretty soon. So I will have a microphone and I can walk around and take your questions, basically. And you can, of course, ask in German and English and in Serbian and Croatian, probably. And we can translate. Bühne frei.
Thank you a lot, Claudia and Christiane, for inviting me to moderate this wonderful panel with Jelena Maksimovic and Katrin Hornek. I prepared some questions, but I think I would much more like to come into the conversation with you after I was watching your pieces the second time, because it's another kind of impression to watch your film for the first time. I watched it really in the night at 4 o'clock in the morning after a conference where I had a lot of thoughts in my head and the film bring me down. I was really like totally coming into the film and very much enjoyed the film and this moment of being in the mountains and go back to the past through the perspective of a protagonist, the woman protagonist of today. And Katrin, your soundtrack is about actually also some kind of memories which are a part, the earth is the protagonist. So here we have a young woman as a protagonist and here we have the clay as actually the artifact of a huge or very long-term transformation processes. I'm curious or would like to ask you about this moment. How did you make the decision to make a kind of soundtrack and to put us, I felt as an actor today. I was on the stage here at the Belvedere 21. I was actually shaping the clay and there were cameras around us, photographers around us, and I was all the time thinking about this moment of the stage, and this moment of shaping, actually. Maybe you can say something about your conceptualization of the work. Why did you choose this kind of dramaturgy, but also the medias?
Where do I start? A lot of questions. Actually, it's funny because the piece is like really, it always kind of hits me or it happens to me or I can't really grasp it because it was such a long process of writing and actually it was done for the Riga Biennial and there you had 80 tons of clay and people were kind of laying on the clay and traveling from there. So for the adaptation here, it was really important for me to kind of find a site-specific hook, like really try to accompany you from your souls into the ground, into Latvia, where you could start the travel. But like doing it now, the full thing, I felt like it's weird that I tried to ground people, but the clay was missing. And the ground was missing. So in a way it was a totally different experience than I planned it before. And also the photographers, or like I didn't even notice or realize, I just closed my eyes, so that was not part of the conception. But then I felt I kind of enjoyed this placelessness, even though the first impulse was totally opposite. So I don't know if that answered your question, but like this kind of stage, like being on a stage, it wasn't planned. But the thing is, for me, it's really, or like conceptually, it was really important to kind of make those borders fluid between your hands, people, between the clay, and like make a space for resonance where it doesn't matter if it's my hand or some kind of membrane in me, or to kind of open the flow. So actually when you felt on the stage, you felt different than me. So yeah.
Thank you. Panonski Mornar, I don't know if, as we were listening to the soundtrack of Katrin, there was a Panonic Sea, and it's Balašević song that I know that you know, and you begin with Bajaga and the mountains, and this moment of an accident happened actually to persons who didn't want to accept actually some odors or some kind of, and till this scene, I was not really sure that I'm in Greece. I was totally confused watching the film for the first time. It was Bajaga at the beginning, and we go to the mountains, and the people were speaking, I don't know, Macedonian or Bulgarian accent was there, and then going back, and this woman is the main protagonist somehow in the film, and you see that you follow her path. How did you come to the story? At the end of the film, we get the information that your grandmother is actually was part of the. I don't know if your grandmother or the grandmother of the protagonist was the part of this movement in Greece and partisan movements, and that she then actually escaped to Yugoslavia after the bad end somehow. Why was, or how? On the one hand, we have this historical fact, but on the other hand, how was your process of thinking how to actually introduce us this kind of historical fact memory and actually the influence of the historical fact on you?
Yeah, so first of all, my grandmother used to tell me about the village in northern Greece. The fact is that she actually got Alzheimer, and she couldn't speak for more than 10 years. And then I started remembering stories from my childhood, and I remembered the stories about the village, like the most beautiful village in the earth, and the most like righteous one, where people used to share things and where everything was like right, like in all socialist utopias. So I was like, okay, I have to visit that place and somehow to be able to at least get something to my grandmother before she dies or something like that. So I just went there and I felt something completely incredible, because I just felt that I have to make this film. I have to make an homage to all those brave people who fought there in the Greek Civil War. So that was the starting point. And then I wrote like a script, a very precise one, like the one which begins with like fiction and then becomes observational documentary and then becomes an essay film. And so that was like my intention was to kind of experiment a bit. But then at the end, and of course I was following that logic of like oral tradition of like passing things from generation to generations. So that's why I decided to find like authentic people and authentic stories in those like landscapes and implement them in the film. So I didn't want to construct anything, even though I had like an intention to have those like different kinds of film in one film. But I was completely open for some stories to come, like the story you mentioned at the very beginning, which is actually the story of like Macedonian mountaineers who went into the Greek mountains and actually got lost there, and I mean, they lost their lives, and I was like, oh my God, this is, I mean, this was an analogy to the Greek Civil War, actually, because a lot of Macedonians and a lot of Greek and Macedonian communists were killed or expelled from Greece back then, from 1946 to 1949. So, yeah, it was like that.
Katrin, in a way, after listening to your soundtrack, I begin to watch the film of Jelena with some kind of pattern from your work. And I think that the work of actually Maruša Sagadin influenced me to think that I'm on the stage. So can you, I would like to know or to hear something of your impression. What is connecting your both works, actually? Why do we watch? Why do we at first go to your performance and then watch the film from Jelena, from your point of view?
Well, this is really freestyle now. But I have to say, I really enjoyed watching your film. And I also really like the pace. Like that it's like two pieces that are kind of, like mine is kind of spanning the time, and yours is on the one hand really precise, but like acting also in a very political manner, and combining those landscapes into this narrative. I mean, this is getting really personal. Like also when I do my pieces, I always like also what you said, that you wanted to experiment with formats, and also like I think it's always a question how precise or how political or how outspoken you get, or how immersive or like how random or how broad or how meandering or I don't know, literate, or then go into a speculation in a way, and like trying to go away and not see that it's my piece and your piece. For me, I feel there were some connection points that were really productive for me, but I can't really spell them out. I feel some points were really resonating on yeah, sorry.
No, not a problem.
I told you.
So I was also questioning myself. I mean, when you started your performance, I was like, okay. I mean, of course, I started thinking about certain connection between we're together in this program, and then I felt that it was the earth itself. It was the earth itself which connects those two things. You know, like the feeling of having like connection with your like homeland or the earth itself, like the ground, like the material. Yeah.
The landscape actually somehow, and the elements of the landscape. On the one hand, you are ending your film with a kind of a notion on communism, and also on the metaphor that the plants are actually, in a way, living living a communism. And as I was listening to your piece, I was much more into this moment of capitalism and the oil production, and actually the second half of the 20th century. All to go back very very much at the beginning with the kind of this moment, yoga moments and this thinking about ecological problems that we have at the moment, but at the same time speaking about the processes and levels of transformation is something what brings me to think about the earth, but also about the influence of the human beings on the shaping of the environment. But still this moment of fictional and documentary, how, if I'm right, I think I spoke with Claudia that you are part of a research project. So there is a kind, that was the question maybe also because I begin with this kind of influences between also thinking about other artistic works, but you're working also, I suppose, with researchers coming from other kind of disciplines. How this process influence actually also your own work and how this work out?
Yeah, I have to say a lot because like all the points in the meditation, and I also haven't found a better word for it, but maybe it is just maybe that's just what it is. It's like fact-based. So the real major work and like actually the starting point for the work was that I heard that in westernized bodies, 50% of the nitrogen we have in our bodies, like also building up our DNA and stuff, has once before looped through the Haber-Bosch process, like this nitrogen fixing process that needs a lot of, like it's fueled by gas most often. And like in Latvia, there is the biggest gas, or like a very huge gas storage that is housing 1/10 of what Europe could utilize in a year. And there is a lot of fertilizer production going on. So I wanted to start with this kind of clay housing, like maybe the first being the first cell on Earth, like being our ancestor, but also housing, of course, these gas deposits, and like seeing what it does when you kind of like the most work of this research was to really talk to a lot of scientists also to try to understand or try to visualize all those processes in order to find a way for me actually, to bring myself through, to think it through and to see what it does when you embrace those kind of things and then open up the stage. So it's really a kind of fact-based and research-based work that I then tried to find a form for that can then continue into this deep future, saying, okay, it does matter which processes have informed processes, and when these pores open again and are open for new life, like if this doesn't make a difference, if you are kind of looped through a machine 200 times or not, then yeah, I don't know. So
it matters in a way, or it influences the communication processes, but also the shaping processes.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jelena? What can we somehow, how those kind of filmic visualization of these historic processes in a way influence our today thinking about the society? Marta Popivoda is also speaking with the protagonist coming out of the Second World War. Dušica Dražić just made also a radio play about the forestation processes in Yugoslavia, where her father was involved. Why so many analysis, reflection on kind of the 20th century Yugoslav past? And
I mean, we cannot escape, actually. We are trying to find like some kind of pattern, some kind of like idea for the future, like while exploring the past. And I'm kind of tired of those processes because I really like edited a lot of films about Yugoslavia and about like wars during the 90s and from every like point of view and perspective and stuff like that, and somehow for me it's like kind of like closed with this, and I'm ready to go on searching for like images of the present moment, because I understand. I also felt like a necessity for like healing our wounds with like while exploring the past, but I think that now we have to face the present moment and realize what to do. And that's why I decided to implement this monologue at the very end of the film, because I realized that without it, this film doesn't have the context at all. So yeah,
it is a little bit like we had like 3 decades about a moment of diagnosis and a kind of I think in both works a kind of pressure that we have. We have an ecological crisis, so we have to think about how do we work with the resources around us. And on the other hand, we have a kind of social crisis that we have to think about how do we imagine our also, in a way, social past, where maybe the nature have to be also the main part of it. Why 30 minutes? I had the impression like after 10 minutes, okay, I have to open my eyes to look around, it's cold. After 20 minutes, I thought, yes, it has to be so long, otherwise I'm not really coming into it. How did you somehow, it's always this moment of the format of time, how long something should be narrated, how long something needed to come into the story. I'm just curious about
it's
your
really, I mean, the whole research would have taken maybe, like if, yeah, it's really, like, it's a hard question because because people don't follow longer than 30 or 40 minutes, and I also felt like listening to it today, it so much has to do with you, if you can hear it, what you hear, where you go, how long it is, if it's too long, too short, so I decided it shouldn't be longer than 30 minutes, and then it got 40. So it just happened. I couldn't stop it.
Thank you, Katrin. Maybe we should now, Claudia, do you think it's time to open up the discussion and to include the voices from the audience?
If there are questions, are there any questions? Yeah, I'll pass you the...
oh my God.
Hi. So maybe my question is kind of a fan question, following Jelena's work for a long time. But actually, it kind of where I also find a connection between the two works in terms of perspective and dealing like meditative and kind of not having one perspective and being fluid. And it's about the last shot, of course, because when it starts and when it takes you also with sound and the perspective of the monologue, and the political perspective and the personal, and then it goes around and it goes outside of the body, into the tall grass, into the wind, comes back and everything. So for me, that's the most political actually thing that one can do. And now you were saying actually about what's your take on the situation and how you see the moment and the past. So yeah, I'm just kind of fascinated, but if there's anything that kind of brought you specifically to this kind of form, and how you work with it, or anything you wanted to say about it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the question. And you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that you somehow didn't want I mean, that the audience kind of felt differently than you while participating in the performance, and I I actually wanted the opposite. I somehow wanted to. First of all, I didn't want to finish this film without this monologue. I was like, okay, in the middle of the shooting process between the winter part and the summer part, and I was in Berlin working with Marta Popivoda on Landscape of Resistance, and I was like, what the fuck? I mean, I don't have a film. I don't want to finish this film without the specific context of this moment, without my, political position, even though it's very ironic, and it's Olga Dmitrievich wrote that text. It's very also poetic and ironic at the same time, but it's like that. We don't have anything to say unless we turn to the past and somehow realize how brave were our grandmothers and our grandfathers. So somehow I realized that and regarding the direction of the scene, so I wanted it to be to start from the observational scene, so because it comes out of the film, so it has to follow the structure of the film somehow, and we were observing the main actress through the whole of journey of hers. So I wanted it to start like that, but then at the end I wanted to become meta film and to address directly to the audience in order to somehow answer all of my questions actually, and yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah, thank you both for your works. For me, it was very interesting, Anna, what you said at the beginning, that in Jelena's film, the protagonist was the grandmother. For me, it was not. For me, it was the landscape. The landscape, that was the recorder of what she has gone through, and in this case, for me, it was really a brilliant match with Katrin's work, where also the earth, or the little, yeah, was telling this whole story of 450,000 years ago, or million years ago, and yeah, I just wanted to ask Jelena, if what would you say is the protagonist of your film?
Sorry, what?
What would you say is the protagonist of your film?
It's everything. It's the landscape. Of course, the girl is just a tool for me. It may be rude to say, but I decided to have person very similar to myself, just to be a mediator between the spectator and those landscapes, those people, those documents, because I was interested in documenting those spaces on the first place. So somehow for me, yeah, all of those elements are the main character in my film, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, also thank you from my side, and I have a question for Katrin, and because you also introduced your work that it was prolonged to the version which you showed in Riga, and that was the part of the introduction, right? Which you spoke. Was it? No. So how was it? The work you showed at the biennial was the sound piece with the installation.
Yeah.
But not with your live spoken. Yeah. Could you say something about this part which you spoke? Like the first 10 minutes.
That I spoke today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why I did it, or?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit. Was it in the context showing it here, or?
Yeah. I'm always confronted with my need to do site-specific works, or like I just can't, like I always have to adapt to the spaces. And for the Riga Biennial, like I also edited the soundtrack, because there you started in this hall, and there was this 80 tons of clay, and you would kind of get introduced there. So here it was the challenge: how do I bring you to a space where you can start imagining going, or like, why would you connect to a red thing coming from Riga? So yeah, that's why I thought maybe it would help to understand the geologic connection and kind of bring you to that clay pit. Experiencing it, I'm not sure if that wasn't confusing, because I haven't heard it in one go, or like it's this kind of work that you have to listen to 2 weeks after you did, or like, yeah. So, but that was the main choice, to try to understand, or like try to ground you and bring you to where the piece starts, and kind of also show, like, yeah, open up this geologic connection to. Yeah.
I have a question. Can I ask a question? To both of you, to Jelena and Katrin, about the sound, because I think in both works the sound is very pronounced. In the audio play, you use sound in a very specific way to kind of open up spaces, basically, or to make space, and to have this, for us as listeners, to have this imagination of a space. When we go into a cavity or in a cavern, it all of a sudden kind of opens a reverberating space and kind of adds this spatial dimension, and sometimes there is a sound that kind of fictionalizes it even more. And so I was interested in the sound design and how you thought about that. And in Jelena's case, you have these songs punctuating the film very poignantly. At the beginning, there's this song where Marusha said it's a very famous song. I don't know it, but maybe you can say a little bit about it. And then there is the partisan song in the middle, or in the middle, maybe after 2/3. And that comes in like I don't know, like a big symphony, basically. It's this very, very powerful point and cut, and now I'm telling you something that was there all the time, but now it's in the open, basically. So I was wondering about the songs and the music and how you used it as well.
For the sound, I worked together with Karl Salzmann, and I started out very in a documentary style, because I went there and did a lot of field recordings, and then I came back and Karl said it doesn't work. So actually that was also a transition from documentary to fictional, but still the landscape, like the real sounds are there, but if you're not from Latvia, you might not have noticed.
But it's basically you had to fictionalize them to make them more authentic.
Well, the thing is, since the story in itself is quite complex and dense, and at the beginning I wanted the sound to kind of create these escapes in itself, but then you would have lost the flow. So we decided in the end it's more important to bring people on the flow. Otherwise, yeah, people who listened to it beforehand, we always lost them. Yeah.
Okay. So regarding the soundscape in our film, so I insisted on authentic atmospheres, and it was very hard for us, especially regarding the monologue, because I insisted to be recorded on the set. So it was very hard. I mean, especially for Jelena to do the whole mise en scene and like the camera movement 360, and of course for Jakov, our sound designer, to like catch everything properly and stuff like that. And I insisted in post-production not to like, I mean, to clean it too much. I just wanted to be authentic, because it was very important for me for the whole thing to happen in the authentic space, because otherwise it will make sense for me. And about the music, so the first song is very popular one, so it's like Bajaga and Instruktori, that's like very famous band, and I mean it was very famous all over Yugoslavia, and it still is. And it wasn't pre-written, so I didn't know that I'm gonna use the song. And then we started like traveling to the first part of the shooting, and then the friend of mine, Dan, was driving a car, and he just played that album, and the song started, and I started crying, and I was like, oh my God, I was carrying that cassette with me all the time where I was a little girl, and when my grandmother used to take care of me. And so I was like carrying that cassette, and I was like, okay, this is the song for the beginning of the film. It was so obvious that it has to do something with the film. So it was like that. And the second song is like the Greek popular one from the cafe, and that scene was actually directed by our friend Trifonas, who was like the second main role in the film, and he suggested us that he's gonna dance for us, and we were like, okay, and it was very, 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 I mean, I appreciate that a lot, because his performance is I mean, very powerful for me, and especially the fire he made. I mean, we didn't know that he's gonna do that and stuff like that, and we was like, okay, what's going on? And then the director of photography just panned, yeah, in order to let us see the fire. So, and the third song is like the partisan one, the resistance song from Greek partisans, so it was like kind of natural for me to put that song in that place. It was pre-written, I mean, the transition between the winter and the summer in the film. And the last song is like Slovenian cantautor who died a couple of years ago, Tomaž Pengo, which whom I appreciate very much. And actually, the friend of mine, when we had like screening in Slovenia couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine told me, but you put that song because Slovenia also became one of your homelands. Come on, Jelena, admit it. You have to admit it. So I was like, okay, maybe that's the reason. But I mean, my main reason was that I wanted to like, somehow the emotion was right, and I wanted to pay an homage to Tomaž Pengo at the end of the film, because he died recently, and he meant a lot to me. So that's it.
more questions? What's the-
It's maybe not so much a question, it's a remark, or I would like to thank you for showing us this film. I did not see it before. As Claudia said in the introduction, she saw it and she suggested it for tonight, and thank you also, Claudia, for including this film. But what I wanted to say is, because you said now it was the right emotion to choose this film by the Slovene composer. Maybe you can say something about emotions, because it is so, the film caught me from the first second on, so it is in full effect. One is in the middle of the film and one follows the story, and then you have the pictures, they are all, for me, very comforting. It is also a film about comfort. Do you understand what I mean? You're talking about atrocities, about war crimes, about contaminated landscapes, how this landscape is also like full with corpses or full with cruelties. So there is this contradiction, because this is so comforting for me to see the film. I don't want to say beautiful, but it has, because it transports emotion, it is comforting.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, first of all, this film for me is about like a woman in me. So I mean, my previous film was about like males from my neighborhood, and I mean, I wanted to explore that side of myself. And this one is about like my grandmother, who was like the most influential person in my life. So, I mean, during the process, I just realized, okay, I'm a woman, I have to admit it. And because we live in really like patriarchal system, very hardcore. I mean, I'm from Zemun, that specific part of Belgrade, which is very like macho. So I mean, I had some difficulties of like regarding myself as a woman because of that. But those landscapes are like that, you know. They're wonderful. I mean, they're like so powerful that we have to like somehow document them in the way they are, you know. I mean. Because I wasn't interested in judging, in like bringing justice through this film, in nothing like that. I was interested in love, actually. I was interested in my grandmother giving me such wonderful feeling of being like a fighter, you know, like so, yeah. It's just like that. It has to be painful and wonderful at the same time, I think.
Okay. Maybe just last question, or because of the question also of Christianity, this moment of something is coming together, the clay is coming together with the hands of the audience. And in the film of Jelena, we have a lot of movements where somehow two persons are coming together. The ski teacher and the one person, this person who is telling why he's working in the mountains, then he and his son, the dog and the person. There are very often constellations of two persons somehow coming together. And at the end, this moment of the nature, actually, and the kind of Ursprung, of origins, coming together in a way. So I think there is also a kind of this intimacy almost between the earth and the person and between...
That's why, that's what I was trying to explain at the beginning. I mean, yeah, I also felt like that.
Well, yes and no. Because, I mean, there is also the body stones that don't maybe feel so intimate, or you don't want to imagine so much having them in you, or like maybe not intimate but porous, or like kind of dissolving, or like auflösen. What's that?
Dissolving or disappearing, or
Yeah, like that. It's not so much about the surfaces, but the Durchdringung, the
intervening,
intertwining
of the things.
of different stratas and membranes and contexts.
Eine Frage noch, eine letzte.
I'm also not sure if it's really a question, but I really enjoyed the program very much and your works, but I'm also quite confused a little bit, especially when I came into the cinema, in the room here, because being outside, listening to the sound, going inside, was such a different experience than to go into a cinema in a space like this, and to be directed on the screen again and looking at things, and from the sensuality. It's such a big difference, and it really confused me, and it took me a while, also like here in this discussion, to get this also with the audience, these comments. There's really poetic correlations between these two works, I think, and it's quite inspiring. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming and for presenting your works, and thank you, Anamarija, for moderating the talk. Thank you for coming. Come back next week. It's the season's finale with concerts and DJ sets, and yeah, please come back. Thanks for coming.